For minutes into Brett's first all-hands meeting, I knew this guy was going to torch the building and call it innovation. Picture this. Friday morning, conference room smells like burnt Keurig, half the engineers are still debugging in their heads from last night, and in walks Brett. Shiny teeth, Patagonia vest, and the type of haircut that screams, I pay someone to style this with a spreadsheet. He struts in like he's about to pitch himself on Shark Tank, claps his hands once like we're a campfire circle, and says, let's talk scale, people. Disruption. Velocity. This backend is your grandfather's Buick. Let's build a Tesla. My eye twitched. I've been here 5 years. 5 quiet, paranoid, caffeine-fueled years. I built those systems brick by brick, validation layers, audit trails, cold backups nested inside offsite backups, structured logging like the NSA was watching. Boring, invisible stuff. Stuff that doesn't get Slack emojis or mentions in press releases. But it works. No user ever thanked me because they never saw the disasters I prevented. That's the point. But Brett wanted to clean house. Said our backend smelled like mothballs and COBOL. Never mind we weren't running COBOL. Never mind we'd had 0 major outages in 3 fiscal years. His eyes scanned every terminal like a hawk looking for something to gut. We're over-engineered, he said. Too much bloat. Every time I load a pipeline config, it's like reading a conspiracy theory. I raised a brow. That conspiracy theory's the reason your reports balance and your APIs don't vomit. He grinned like he'd just won a poker hand. See? That's the legacy mindset I'm here to fix. Legacy mindset, right? The man had been here 27 minutes and he already wanted to rip out the safety net because it didn't match his PowerPoint color scheme. He pulled up a slide deck that looked like it was designed by a preschooler hopped up on Red Bull. Bright colors, arrows, circles, words like synergy and cloud native tossed around like seasoning. My favorite slide was titled The Redundancy Illusion, a whole chart dedicated to mocking our backup systems. Every duplicate copy, he explained with a smug nod, is just latency wearing a mustache. Latency wearing a mustache. This jackass thought metaphors were strategy. I didn't say a word. I just kept staring at the slide like it was a crime scene. Meanwhile, the junior devs started nodding. Not because they agreed, because they were scared not to. Brett had CEO shine all over him. Came in with a letter of endorsement from corporate. Results-oriented. Visionary. A breath of fresh air. What that meant in plain English was, he's untouchable until the fire gets big enough to toast someone important. By Monday, he'd started the optimization sprint. Translation. Gut the old code. All our validation suites gone. The logging routines I'd tuned over years, replaced by some lightweight middleware from a blog post he found. The cold backups? Too expensive. No ROI. He flagged them for decommissioning. Said they encouraged laziness. You know what encourages laziness? I said in the hallway later that week. Blaming the safety net when you fall. He just smirked. Maybe if you spent less time protecting failure, you'd have room for growth. I nodded, smiled even, because if I opened my mouth again, I'd bury a screwdriver in a wall. Instead, I walked back to my desk, took a deep breath, and started building the file that would save his ass and ruin his career. Labeled it Brett_insurance_plan.zip. Just in case.it started with a merge conflict that felt less like an accident and more like a drive-by shooting. Brett had tasked one of his bright-eyed code cadets, some bootcamp graduate named Leo who thought Python was a lifestyle brand, to refactor the legacy validation modules. That was his phrasing. Refactor. What it meant in practice was yanking out hundreds of hours of defensive code, regex walls, sanity checks, edge case catchers, even timestamp locks I'd snuck in after a 3 a.m. outage 3 years ago. Gone. Just gone. I opened the pull request and stared at the diff for 10 minutes. It looked like someone had deleted a parachute mid-jump and left a post-it note saying, "Trust the vibe." I pinged Leo privately. "Hey, you realize you just removed the entire user input validation chain?" He replied with a smiley emoji and Brett said it's duplicative. "We're streamlining." Streamlining. That's the new word for gutting the engine so the car weighs less, hoping the brakes still work. So I did what professionals do. I wrote a report. Not a rant. Not a manifesto. A clear, concise technical brief explaining the necessity of every removed validation script, every backup protocol, every alert threshold they had just nuked. I laid out previous incidents, near misses, and real disasters from before our systems hardened. I showed the savings. I showed the potential losses. I CC'd Brett, the CTO, and even legal. Brett called a team meeting the next day. 15 people packed into the glass-walled war room like it was a live taping of Who Wants to Be Blamed for Legacy Code. He clicked the projector on and said, "Let's talk about fear." Oh great. He waves my report in the air like it's a subpoena. This, he points, is the kind of thinking that keeps companies stagnant. Do you know how Google scaled? How Netflix survived? I muttered, I assume it wasn't by removing their input validation. He didn't miss a beat. We don't babysit data. We scale it. A few people chuckled. I didn't, because I've seen what happens when you treat data like a toddler who can fend for itself. You get chaos in a suit. Garbage in, lawsuits out. From now on, Brett said, we're focusing on clean code, high-velocity pipelines, and lean architecture. If you need a safety net, maybe you're not confident in the tightrope. I looked right at him and said, funny thing about tightropes, gravity doesn't care about confidence. He waved me off. We're done with band-aids. This system needs a cleanse. That week, half my validation scripts were overwritten. The others got pulled in a sweeping repo hygiene commit from Brett himself. He tagged it spring_cleaning_final_NLV2, like a toddler naming a finger painting. The backups, gone from the dev budget. Cold storage flagged for quarterly review, which is corporate speak for delete when no one's watching. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't angry, not yet, just tired. Tired like a mechanic watching a teenager pour orange soda into the gas tank. So I did what I always do when things go stupid. I built my own failsafe. Quietly, I spun up a private S3 bucket out of band under a billing tag no one would think twice about. I rerouted the backup process there. Nightly, silent, encrypted, labeled it innocently, info_mp/archive_legacy_configs_k23.zip. Inside that bucket sat a full copy of the user DB schema, all validation logic, and weekly snapshots going back 6 months. It was the kind of thing you hope you'll never need, like a fire extinguisher or a restraining order. And I didn't document it. I didn't tell a soul. Not legal. Not IT. Not even my favorite sysadmin who always left cold brew in the fridge. Because I knew how this story ends. Not with applause. With a phone call. With a silence. With a name no one wants to say. Except when everything else breaks. It was the third Wednesday of the month. Always the quiet before the storm. Most of us were elbows deep in sprint wrap-ups. QA was flagging some subtle but ugly permission issues in the new user module, and DevOps had already warned that the rollback script hadn't been tested since Brett streamlined it into non-existence. But none of that mattered to our boy Brett, because he'd just come back from a vision alignment offsite where someone from marketing told him, and I quote, "You need to own the Monday morning narrative." So that Thursday morning, he barged into the dev bullpen with the kind of energy you only get from Red Bull, unchecked power, and not understanding a damn thing about backend reliability. "Good news, team," he said, grinning like a man with a lighter and a can of gasoline. "We're pushing the new module live tomorrow. End of day. Silence. Dead. Drop your mouse. Blink in slow motion silence. Even Leo, the same guy who proudly gutted half our validation layer, turned to look at Brett like he'd just suggested skydiving without parachutes to save on weight. I was the first to speak because of course I was. "You want to push to production on a Friday evening?" He laughed. "Yeah, why not? We'll get a nice clean rollout, do a soft press release Sunday night, and dominate the headlines Monday. Big win. Big funeral," I muttered. "What?" I leaned back in my chair. "Pushing to prod on a Friday is how horror stories start, Brett. You don't drop untested features when the whole skeleton crew's about to log off for 48 hours. Who's gonna catch failures? QA goes dark at 6. Legal won't even see a panic email until Monday. You roll this out and something breaks, you better have a damn Ouija board." He waved a hand like he was clearing smoke from a sacred vision. "Stop thinking small. We've tested it internally. No, you tested it internally. I cut in. With unit tests built by interns who don't even know what transactional integrity means. Brett's smile faltered for half a beat. Then he went corporate cold. This is the direction we're taking. If you're not aligned with the rollout plan, I understand. You don't have to be part of it. And there it was. The rope. I looked down at the ticket queue, saw the error reports stacking up like beer cans in a frat house, and realized I didn't care anymore. He wanted to climb a burning ladder? Let him. Fair enough, I said. Send me the formal change request and I'll mark myself detached from the deployment. Not blocking, not participating, not endorsing. His nostrils flared. So you're just walking away? No, I said, spinning slowly in my chair. I'm just stepping aside. The path you're on? It doesn't need me. It needs a damn fire marshal. That afternoon, I wrote up a resignation. From this release, not the company. A documented refusal to sign off. Dated, time-stamped, archived. I even CC'd compliance who wouldn't care unless the servers caught fire. But later it would matter. Then I left. Not in a dramatic middle finger way. Just closed my laptop, grabbed my hoodie, and walked across the street to the dive bar that still had a jukebox and smelled like spilled rye and crushed dreams. I ordered 2 beers. One for me, one for the moment. Because when the lights go out, the alarms start screaming, and the money men start crying. No one ever says, damn, I wish we'd launched harder on a Friday. They say, who the hell let this happen? And I plan to answer that question with a file. One Brett never knew I kept point 4:47 p.m. Friday. The moment the button was pushed, Brett posted a Slack message so smug I could feel the pomade in his hair through the screen. Brett in #releaseglory. Party popper, new user module live. Modern backend, modern mindset. Big win for the team. Let's scale, baby. Party popper. Half the dev team reacted with party emojis. The other half didn't respond at all. I just sipped my beer and watched the timestamp like a man watching the clock tower before a demolition charge. 14 minutes. That's how long it took. It started small, like most system rot does. A help desk ticket popped in at 5:01 from a regional bank rep. Client unable to log in. Error 502 on multi-session token. By 5:03, another. User profile returning null for fields that were populated yesterday. 5:05. Purchase history gone. Only recent transaction showing is a duplicate dated 1970. 5:06. Accounts being merged across users? Client A can see Client B's data? The Slack channels started buzzing. Not the loud kind of panic, no, not yet. Just a kind of static dread. Engineers asking subtle questions. Support pinging devs with, hey, is something up with the user service? And Brett went radio silent. I refreshed the status dashboard from the bar's dusty Wi-Fi and saw the error log spike like a cardiac monitor hooked up to a blender. Session IDs were duplicating, record hashes were mismatching, and the audit trail was basically a Jackson Pollock of corrupted entries. My phone vibrated. Another ticket. Then another. I clicked into one report and just stared. A single malformed JSON object, one goddamn payload from a third-party vendor, had slipped past the API gateway because someone, Leo, had simplified the validation layer. No sanitization, no fallback, no regex check, and that malformed object had overwritten a key constraint in the primary user database. It was like letting one rat into a bakery and watching it breed in real time. By 5:15, they tried a soft reset. Didn't work. The rollback script didn't run. Because Brett's optimization had killed the transactional snapshots weeks ago. I opened Slack for the first time in hours and just sat back watching the thread implode. QA tagging DevOps. DevOps tagging Brett. Brett tagging no one because he wasn't there anymore. Probably still polishing his Slack announcement and refreshing LinkedIn for applause. But the funny part? I felt nothing. No glee. No rage. Just this cold, low hum in my chest. Vindication. Not loud. Not proud. Just real. The kind of vindication you don't brag about because people are too busy screaming. I took another sip of my beer and ordered wings. Somewhere between the buffer overflow on userauth module and finance portal unreachable. Someone mentioned calling legal. At 5:39 p.m., one of the sysadmins asked a single question in the emergency channel. Do we have a backup from pre-deploy? Silence. 5 full minutes of it. Then a ping. From Leo. Didn't Brett disable the legacy backups last sprint? That was the moment. That was when the silence became noise. Not typing. Not talking. Just presence. The collective realization that the floor had dropped and no one was wearing shoes, let alone parachutes. I closed Slack, finished my wings, and looked down at the flash drive in my pocket. Brett didn't know it yet, but his TED Talk had just turned into a confession.by 6 p.m. The platform was dead. Not glitchy, not laggy, dead, like trying to get a pulse from a microwave. Login attempts looped into timeout hell. Admin consoles returned cryptic SQL dumps. Billing couldn't generate invoices. Users, real, paying human beings, were locked out of their accounts with error messages that looked like they'd been written by a drunk robot. And that's when the Rail calls started. The internal line from finance rang first, then legal, then 2 of our biggest enterprise clients. You could tell who answered by the look on their faces. Stone white, throat locked, eyes darting like they were hearing a fire alarm no one else could hear. Brett was pacing like a caged CEO in a panic-themed reality show. Earbuds in, gesturing wildly to no one, spouting words like incident response and low-impact exposure, while Slack continued hemorrhaging alerts like a stock ticker in freefall. At 6:12, the head database admin, a guy named Raj who doesn't say much unless it's necessary, walked slowly into the war room holding his laptop like it was radioactive. Brett, he said calmly, you need to see this. Brett spun around, still on the phone, waving him off. 1 SEC. I'm managing optics. Raj didn't wait. He turned the laptop around and pointed at the screen. The malformed vendor payload overwrote a unique keychain in the primary user schema. It slipped through the new validation layer. Once that happened, the relational constraints started rejecting legit entries. System fell into a cascade failure. We now have thousands of user records without relational anchors. Blank stares. Brett blinked. What does that mean? It means, Raj said, with all the mercy of a butcher, the database doesn't know who's who anymore. Permissions are floating. Pointers are busted. Any attempt to write to that chain will only worsen it. If we don't roll back soon, it'll be unrecoverable. A full beat of silence, like a courtroom before the guilty verdict drops. Okay, Brett finally said, swallowing. So let's just restore from backup. Raj didn't blink. There are no valid backups. Brett's face twisted. What? That's not. No, we had them. I saw the diagrams. You flagged cold storage for deprecation, Raj said. DevOps removed the scheduled snapshots last sprint. The last available backup is from over 30 days ago, and it's incomplete. We ran a mock restore this morning. It's missing over 40% of user activity data. It's useless. I stood in the back, quiet, watching. Beer still in my system, wings still on my breath. Heart rate barely elevated. Brett spun, looking for someone to blame. Why the hell didn't anyone override that? Who approved the sprint plan? Who was in charge of the release checklist? Leo made a noise, half protest, half defense. You were Brett, someone muttered, quiet but clear. You locked down the repo. You assigned release authority to yourself. You overrode QA and ignored ops. Brett looked like someone had slapped him with a keyboard. No, he said, shaking his head, voice rising. No, I was trying to streamline. You people are the ones who said we had too many dependencies. Someone from legal walked in then. Not with a smile. Not with a plan. Just holding her phone up like it was a loaded gun. We've got 3 vendors threatening breach of contract. One's already posted on LinkedIn. If client data crossed, we're legally exposed to. I get it, Brett snapped, red now, collar damp. Okay, I get it. Just let me think. Raj looked him dead in the eye. You had 30 days to think. And that's when it happened. That flicker behind Brett's eyes. The moment a man realizes the hill he sprinted up is actually a cliff. That he's already midair. That gravity doesn't negotiate. He stumbled back into his chair and muttered, "We need to find the old backups. Somewhere. Anyone have them locally?" No one answered, because the answer was obvious, and it was about to sting. The boardroom lights flickered on at 11:52 p.m. like a crime scene getting prepped for photography. You could feel the heat off the fluorescence, but it wasn't from the bulbs. It was the tension. That choking, sterile corporate kind that smells like dry-cleaned suits, panic sweat, and shattered quarterly projections. 12 people sat around that table. The CFO, the CIO, legal, the head of client relations, 2 outside observers, and a bunch of stone-faced board members who flew in just for this little funeral. Brett stood at the front. Tie gone, shirt wrinkled, hair greasy from stress, eyes wide and fake alert like a man who'd chugged 3 energy drinks and still couldn't outrun accountability. He launched into a breathless monologue before anyone asked a question. We believe the root cause was a rogue dependency injected through a deprecated vendor channel. Our new framework had a temporary blind spot and… Stop. The CIO cut in, calm but icy. Where's the rollback? Brett froze, blinked. Excuse me? The rollback. To pre-deployment. Where is it? Brett shuffled some papers, opened his laptop, clicked furiously like maybe an answer would magically appear if he hit the keyboard fast enough. The backups were, well, we streamlined the infrastructure last sprint, and some of the legacy cold storage protocols were flagged for decommission. The CFO raised an eyebrow. Decommissioned? Who authorized that? Brett's voice cracked. We were optimizing storage costs across dev branches. The infra team confirmed. The CIO held up a hand like a stop sign. You mean you confirmed? Infra sent a proposal. You signed off on removing the redundancy layer. You locked the budget for Q3. You did. Silence spread across the table like spilled coffee. Slow and sticky. Legal leaned in. Just to be absolutely clear, are you telling us that there is no functioning backup of our primary user database? Brett tried to hold eye contact. Failed. Not one that meets SLA compliance, no. Another board member exhaled through her nose, closed her notebook, and said nothing. That silence hit harder than a shouted curse. CIO tapped the table. Okay, so we're sitting on a corrupted user base, 3 clients threatening lawsuits, thousands of customer records compromised, financial records in limbo, and you want us to believe this is because of a rogue dependency. Brett's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then came the words that made my beer taste sweeter and my blood run just a little warmer. Has anyone, the CFO asked slowly, contacted? What's his name? The senior engineer. The one who wouldn't sign off on this release. A pause. Grayson, someone offered. Right? Grayson. The CFO looked at the CIO. Do we know if he has any of the backups? Brett jumped in, desperate. Grayson was resistant to modernization. He hoarded scripts, used outdated protocols. He didn't understand the vision. If he had backups, they wouldn't even be compatible. He didn't understand the vision? The CIO said flatly. Or did he just not buy your bullshit? Another silence. Then, from the head of legal, call him. The sentence landed like a gavel. No emotion, just execution. Brett looked like someone had punched him in the stomach with a ghost. The CFO stood, straightened her blazer. Get him on the phone. Now, if he can't help, we're filing public breach disclosures by 8 a.m. And I'm not testifying for a damn decision I didn't make. Someone handed Brett a phone. His fingers hovered over the keypad like it might bite him. Because he knew what he had to do. He had to dial the one man he publicly dismissed. The one who told him exactly how this would end. The one who walked away with the fire extinguisher while Brett was busy playing with matches. And outside that boardroom, somewhere between a warm buzz and full clarity, my phone started to ring. The call came in at 12:17 a.m., a number I didn't recognize, but I knew exactly who it was. There's a certain rhythm to desperation, and Brett was the kind of guy who'd call only when all other exits were sealed shut. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Let the dread build. Fourth ring, I answered, slow, quiet. Grayson. Static on the other end. Then a breath. Then a voice I'd only ever heard, oozing confidence and caffeine-fueled delusion. Do you? He cleared his throat. Do you still have any of the backups? No hello. No, how are you? Just raw panic dressed up in a question. I let the silence hang. I wanted him to sit in it. I wanted every suit in that boardroom to watch him squirm with the weight of it. Then I spoke. Calm. Even. You mean the ones you said were a waste of server space? He didn't answer, so I kept going. The ones you mocked. The ones you flagged as archaic paranoia and killed off so you could fit another bullet point on your roadmap. Still nothing. I could hear the conference room behind him. Muffled voices, a chair scraping, someone muttering, "Is he on?" The tension bleeding through the line was almost warm. Finally, Brett broke the silence. His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Yes, those. Another pause. I lit a cigarette. I don't even smoke. But hell, this moment needed a prop. I might, I said. Depends. On what? He asked too fast. My terms. That landed like a hammer. I heard shuffling. Someone in the background said, just give him what he wants. So I gave him the list. Simple. I come in. You shut up. You don't interrupt. I plug in, I restore, I walk out. No commentary. No attempts at spin. And when I'm done, you tell the board exactly who deleted those backups and why. Understood. He hesitated. So I added, otherwise, I'll be finishing this beer and watching the fireworks from my porch. More silence. Then, fine. I could almost see him swallowing his pride like broken glass. One more thing, I said. Tell Raj to open port 22 on the firewall and spin up the archive instance. And Brett. Yeah. If you breathe near my terminal when I walk in, I'll pull the plug and let the whole thing burn. Click. I stood up, grabbed my laptop bag, and finished what was left of my drink. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't about being right. It was about the principle. He built a rocket out of duct tape and denial, and now that it exploded over his investors' heads, he wanted the guy he labeled obsolete to save him. And I would. Not for him, but because I built that system. And I don't let what I build die because someone's vision board said, leaner is cleaner. The backup was real. The damage was real. And now, so was the reckoning. When I walked into the boardroom at 12:51 a.m., it was like stepping into a war bunker an hour after the missiles landed. Ties loosened, makeup smeared, coffee cups empty, bottled water untouched. The air had that strange sterile burn of recycled HVAC and fresh humiliation. Brett was sitting at the head of the table, looking like a man halfway through a public execution. Shirt untucked, blazer gone, collar stained with sweat. He didn't look up. He didn't have to. The room fell quiet as I crossed to the end of the table. Not the seat they left open for me. No, I didn't sit. I stood, center of the storm, calm, unimpressed. Laptop under one arm, thumb drive already slotted in. I didn't greet anyone, didn't acknowledge the suits, didn't pretend this was a negotiation. I plugged in. The projector flickered on, and for a moment, all that appeared was my desktop. One folder. No drama. Then I opened the zip file. The name of it appeared across the 80-inch screen like the headline to an obituary. Brett_insurance_plan.zip. I heard it. The inhale. The mutter. The hush. One board member whispered, unbelievable. Inside the zip. Complete weekly backups from the last 6 months. Timestamped. Verified. Unaltered. Schema snapshots. Legacy validation scripts. Full roll-forward logs. All the layers Brett had stripped like a kid peeling the paint off a safe to make it look cooler. I clicked twice, ran a checksum. Green. Then I turned to Raj, who was already logged into the recovery terminal remotely. He nodded. Ports open, he said. Restore instance is clean. I uploaded the payload, keyed in my script, and let it run. No fanfare, no sparks, just cold, clean efficiency. The kind that doesn't clap for itself. While the status bars crawled across the screen, I finally looked at Brett. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even ashamed. He was hollow, like he'd already played out the next 10 steps in his head and none of them ended with him still in that chair. One of the board members, an older guy with a voice like gravel, leaned forward and said, "Let me get this straight. You deleted the only disaster recovery plan because it didn't look good on a budget slide." Brett tried to speak. I raised a finger, just one, and said, "No." Then I turned back to the laptop. When the restore pinged complete, I handed the machine to Raj over Zoom. "You're live." He nodded, fingers already dancing across the keys, verifying cross-checks and relational binds. In less than a minute, we were connected to a rebuilt shadow environment. Transaction logs syncing, user data repopulating, system health climbing out of the red like Lazarus. "Integrity's good," Raj said, cool as ever. "We'll need a full sweep, but this gets us off the cliff." The CFO exhaled like she'd been underwater. Legal looked like they wanted to light Brett on fire with eye contact alone. Then the CIO turned to me. "Where'd you store this?" "Privately," I said. "Offsite S3 instance. Budget neutral. Redundant. Silent." "And why wasn't this part of our known infrastructure?" I didn't blink. Because if it was, he would have deleted it. No one argued. No one could. Brett was staring at the edge of the table now, like maybe if he focused hard enough, it would swallow him whole. The CEO finally spoke. "Brett, step outside." He stood, slowly, tried to look at me, couldn't hold it. He left, and I stood there, alone in front of 12 people who had once written me off as legacy baggage. No applause, no thank yous, just the sound of a machine reconnecting to life. And that was enough. By 3:27 a.m., the platform was back online. Not perfect, nothing ever is after a disaster, but stable, breathable, like a patient just off the ventilator, blinking under harsh lights but alive. Raj and I worked side by side from 2 terminals, mirroring logs, scrubbing malformed entries, double-checking relational locks and roll-forward status. No one spoke much. Everyone knew the worst had passed. The financial hemorrhaging had slowed. Legal drafted a containment memo. PR whipped up a scheduled maintenance window excuse that was technically true in the way a fire drill is technically exercise. Users were already logging back in, sessions stabilizing, reports coming through. I didn't stick around for the final sync. At 5:08 a.m., I stood up, stretched, packed my laptop, and walked out of the war room like it was just another Thursday. No fist bumps. No eye contact. I wasn't there for redemption. I was there to stop a plane crash after the wings fell off. By 9 a.m., the internal memo hit everyone's inbox. Subject: Strategic Staffing Update. Effective immediately, Brett L. will be reassigned to a new role focused on internal process development. We thank him for his service and contributions and wish him well in his next chapter. Reassigned. That's how they say escorted out at dawn. No press release. No farewell party. Just corporate exile in a padded office where his only job would be to alphabetize regrets. Later that afternoon, I got the call from HR. They offered me the role. Director of Platform Reliability. Corner office. 6-figure bonus. Direct reports. Full visibility. I declined. Told them I wasn't interested in climbing over someone else's rubble. I didn't want to be a director. I didn't want more meetings. I just wanted one thing, and I made that very clear. Total authority over backend infrastructure. Non-negotiable. No interference. They agreed faster than I expected. By sundown, I was back at my desk. Same chair. Same terminal. Same monitor with the slightly sticky T key I never got around to cleaning. I opened the scheduler. Looked at the grayed-out cron jobs Brett had killed off with a smug swipe. I clicked them back on. One by one. Nightly backup, active. Weekly cold storage archive, active. Pre-deploy snapshot, active. Validation redundancy, restored. Then I navigated to the S3 bucket, renamed the entire directory. Not something vengeful, not something loud. Just a quiet, efficient title that would only make sense to me. Anti-Brett _protocols/. I closed the window, leaned back, and lit another cigarette I wasn't planning to finish. Funny, isn't it? Funny how the thing they mocked, cut, and kicked to the curb, the thing they labeled useless, old-fashioned, a waste of space, turned out to be the only thing that worked when everything else died. Funny what people call useless, right until it's the only thing that works.